Everybody. I'm Sam Mentzer. I'm the manager slash instructor at the Chattanooga Library's recording studio downtown on the second floor. Um, I'm here today because I'd like to start a series of videos that are related to recording and the studio in general, and anything really to do with recording, whether it be music, sound for picture, podcasts, whatever the community has shown interest in. I'll dedicate various episodes to that. So, what I'd like to start with today is called pre production. And first, a little bit about myself. Um, I've been recording for probably 20, 21 years now, and started as a hobby, and it's now a profession. So, I'm incredibly excited and happy to do this. So, pre production. And pre production is basically everything that happens before you get into a studio to record. So, prior to production. Um, Music versus podcasting, just for an example, there's going to be some different steps, as you might imagine. For this episode, I'm going to focus on music. So, pre production and when we're recording music. Now, there's two different what we call production chains, and this is from pre-production to mastering, which would be the last stage. Two different types of chains in music in general. Now, and this is not even counting live music, we're talking about in the studio. So one chain would be recorded music and the other would be sequenced music. So what's the difference here? Let's figure that out. So the difference between recorded music and sequenced music can be described as recorded music. You're going to be recording multiple sources at one time. And what I mean by source is it could be vocals, microphone, a drum kit, anything live, regardless of if you're using a microphone or if that source is being plugged directly into a preamp. So think of it as multiple things being done at the same time versus sequence music, which may have a producer, whether they be recording different instruments or just programming things with software, digital instruments with software. It's going to be one person, maybe two, working on something, and it's not going to be recorded in that live setting. Now, this isn't genre dependent at all. So some people might lean towards sequence music being more like EDM and hip hop and those genres, and recorded music being like, rock or jazz or something like that. Well, there's always exceptions to the rule. And for instance, the Roots, Dr. Dre, two big names in hip hop, they record a lot of live instrumentation, and definitely the Roots at one time, and same with Dr. Dre in some of his older recording sessions. So that would be classified as recorded music, where somebody like Trent Reznor, who from the Nine Inch Nails, especially the early stuff, he was recording that and layering that and programming that stuff himself, and that would be classified as rock music. So don't get caught up in whether recorded music and sequence music are distinguished by a certain genre. It's not always the case. So with recorded music, there's one caveat that you may come across, and I mentioned bands, but also studio musicians, which you might have nowadays in Nashville. There's, of course, the thriving studio musician scene, and studio musicians are basically sort of the mercenaries of the music industry, where you're going to pay them to come in and they're going to play exceptionally well. So pre-production with studio musicians is going to be a lot different than pre-production with a band, assuming the band plays together often and they know their parts. So with session musicians, it's a little bit different now than historically. Historically, you might have a studio that has its own cast of musicians there, like the Swampers from Muscle Shoals, for instance, where Muscle Shoals, the studio in Alabama, had the Swampers as basically on staff musicians that played on all the great records that came through there. Stax Records in Memphis, Motown in Detroit, they had in-house musicians. Even in Los Angeles, the Wrecking Crew was a coalition of session musicians out there, but you'll still find that in larger cities. Let's take a look at the production chain in recorded music. And you can see there's 5 steps, and then this recording editing step kind of can happen at the same time. We'll dig into that in a bit here. And this is from Mixing Audio, which is a great book by Roe Izaki. I highly recommend it. It focuses basically from a mixing perspective, but Izaki does a great job at describing other stages here where you can pick and pull from any perspective, really, in this chain to learn from his book. Now, the first stage we see is the songwriting stage, and this is pretty straightforward, where the music, the lyrics are going to be written, the song form is going to be ironed out. Is there going to be a bridge? Is there going to be a guitar solo, a keyboard solo, whatever, a solo? Is there going to be, how long are the verses? Those kind of things. And of course, if you're recording a cover, the hard part's been done for you. You just have to make some decisions about the form. Are you going to cover the song basically the same way it's been recorded on the record, or are you going to do some different things with it? Now, comparing this to a podcast, if that's what you're interested in, this would be, of course, the script. Let's move on to the arranging stage here, where I don't think arranging gets talked about as much as it should. It's very important for artists and bands to think about this, because everything at a stage of the production chain will affect downstream those following stages. So the arranging stage probably affects just as much as any other stage, if not more than maybe the recording stage. And the reason is you can easily overload the arrangement stage. So what are the decisions we're making in arrangement? What is arranging? It's basically, what are the instruments going to play? What parts are they going to play? How are they going to play those parts? When are they going to play those parts? So, for instance, let's think about a few examples. Is acoustic guitar going to play the rhythm part? Or is it going to be on a piano? Is the solo going to be a guitar, a synthesizer? Will there be a horn section? What are the harmony vocal lines? What keyboard patch are you using? There's so many questions that need to be addressed here before you set foot into a studio, because what can happen very easily is discussions come up, people are very creative, and the next thing you know, you spent an hour of the studio time trying to figure out what the pan flute's going to play. Like, those kind of decisions should be made before you set foot in a studio. I did mention the mixing stage, and there's only so much sonic real estate for a stereo mix. And what I mean by sonic real estate is dynamically. So we're talking about the level, subjectively, volume-wise. And then we're talking about the frequency spectrum, which is, humans can hear roughly from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So there's only so much space there to put instrumentation. And I'm guilty of this all the time, where I come up with a lot of ideas and I want to put them all into a song, but I just don't have the room for it. So a good idea, what you can do is subtract some ideas, put them in a song down the line. You've got plenty more songs to put parts into. So this is where a producer can definitely help, especially a band, with different personalities, coming up with different ideas. A producer, in my experience, I've been a producer and I've been working with a producer, so in a band. So it definitely helps to have somebody that's kind of impartial to step in there and rein in some of the ideas for this arrangement stage, because the producer is going to have the big picture in mind, where a band or artist might be thinking about the intricacies of their song. The recording editing stage. Now, they're listed here together, but usually what happens is the editing stage follows directly after the recording stage. So savvy engineers can definitely make it happen at the same time, but let's talk about each stage here individually. And the recording stage is mainly what you're going to be preparing for when thinking about pre-production. So this is when those sources are going to be captured, whether it be by microphones, directly into a preamp, software instrumentation, what have you. This is when the sounds are going to be captured. What I would say is to make a checklist here of the kind of information that you need to know before you would go into a studio for recording. So what kind of mics are available in the studio? How big is the space? How small is the space? You know, are there ISO boosts? Those kind of things. What kind of preamps? Software. At the studio in the library, we use Pro Tools. Headphone system, often not talked about, also known as the Q system. This is where individual musicians can create a mix for their headphones. Very important to know how many headphone boxes essentially are in a studio before you go in. If you have a 10-piece band and there's only 8 there, you have to make some decisions. Think about your mic techniques and your setups, especially for something like drums. How do you want to go about recording the drums? An input list. Creating an input list beforehand is definitely very important, and that kind of comes into conjunction with the preamp selection. So how many preamps are there? Because that's going to dictate how many things you can record at once. And that's not including software instrumentation or, a USB keyboard or something. We're talking about sources that need to be amplified. So at the library, we have 40 preamps, and I've never gotten close to having a session with 40 preamps going at once. But theoretically, we could record 40 sources at one time. If you go to a studio where there's, say, 16 preamps, right? 16 preamps, and you want to put 10 mics on a drum kit, you run out of real estate very quickly. So you can see why that would be important. The editing stage, now, like I said, this can be done at the same time, especially in the digital age, by a savvy engineer, but most of the time it happens like right after the recording stage. And this we'll talk about this in a separate video when we're talking about mixing, but this is basically when you're combining different takes, say of vocals or something, that's known as comping, deleting extraneous noises, things like that. And then what you want to do is basically prep the song to be mixed. So you're talking about creating maybe stems, and we'll get into this stuff later, and think about like streamlining the session for a mixing engineer, because they might charge you more if they're going to be editing and tuning vocals and things like that for you. So most of the time that stuff happens before you send it to a dedicated mixing engineer. What is mixing? Let's just talk about that for a second. That's the stage where the sources are all put together to create a stereo mix. And that's you're going to be altering the recordings. No matter how well recorded they are, they will be altered, trust me. And try to be conscious of this stage when you're both recording and definitely arranging too, because too many ideas at the same time, listeners are only going to be able to focus on one thing at a time. So this is also a stage where if you get a creative mixer, they might take some liberties and remove and maybe even add things to a mix. It's not out of the question. The mastering stage, that's the final stage where basically the mix is going to be further altered and maximize the playback there. So, say you listen to your song on your car stereo versus your home stereo system, or uh, your headphones, where there's not going to be an audible drop off in quality. It's maximizing that playback for different systems. So I made a little pre-production checklist, and the first bullet point here is budget. Now, if you come to the library, you don't have to worry about that. Time is your budget. But if you're going to a commercial studio, you have to plan how much time you have and what you can actually get done in that time. Because not everybody is a polished band that's played gig after gig after gig. Like Nirvana, for instance, their first record, Bleach, they did in like one recording session. So prepare for what you want to get done and systematically get that stuff done when you're on a time constraint. The arrangement structure decisions, now these are going to be done, they should be done when the song's being written. Tempo, key, same thing. So it's easy to change the tempo in a studio session. Very easy. Just change the tempo for the click track and you can get rolling. The key, on the other hand, is a lot more difficult. I don't think a band would come into the studio and decide to change the key of a song they've been playing together. But if you are working with session musicians, then most of them will be able to just adjust on the fly and go with it. And that's why in Nashville, for instance, they use the Nashville number system. It's a streamlined approach to reading music that allows for changes to happen pretty quickly. You'll want to find out that studio info. So remember, we're talking about mics and all those things, preamps, reference tracks. Now, reference tracks are very important for the mixing stage. And what a reference track is in that context is a professionally done mix of a song where you can use that as reference for what you're going for, a sound that you're going for, basically. And it's very genre dependent. So if you are, say you're making a hip-hop song, you're probably not going to want to use a Motley Crue record for your reference track. You're going to use something like Drake or somebody who's on the charts right now, if that's the sound that you're going for. So you could get as detailed as going for the subgenre there. So in the context of using reference tracks for recording stage, you're going to want to think about, what kind of sounds are you going for? And it never hurts to use reference tracks for the recording stage as well as the mixing stage. Scratch tracks will definitely help those session musicians where if you're recording little demos at home, it can even be on your iPhone, your smartphone, whatever. I went to a few recording sessions in Nashville where session musicians were hired, and they talked about 5 minutes listening to a recording on the phone, and then they went in and knocked the song out. So, you get what you pay for there. They're definitely the best in the biz, and giving them an abundance of information is just going to make your time even more flexible. So another thing I would recommend is to bring those things like extra strings, tuners, picks, power supplies if you're using pedal boards, things like that you may need just in case. We're pretty well stocked down here at the library, so I try to have everything prepared for what you may need, but it's never a bad idea to bring that stuff with you. So that's about all I have for pre-production. The next episode we'll be looking at sequenced music and pre-production and how the production chain is a little bit different there for sequenced music. So good luck, and don't forget the importance of pre-production. Take care, everybody.